It's time for Around the Ozarks Sports Scene, sponsored by Fast Break Sports and The Pitch. Now here's your host, Scott Puryear.
Welcome into another edition of Around the Ozarks Sports Scene. I am Scott Puryear. Thanks again for tuning in for another week of talking sports here in the Ozarks. Big thank you to our sponsors, The Pitch and Fast Break Sports. We'll talk more about them later on in the pod, but time to get to our guest this week. He is the swimming coaching legend over at Drury University. Been in it for 42 years now in his 42nd season with the Panthers. Coach Brian Reynolds. Brian, thanks for joining me.
I'm glad to be here, Scott.
You bet. Been a while since we've done anything media-wise. Of course, I worked with you for many years. We became good friends over that time. At least I thought so. I don't know what you thought. But, I watched Drury Swimming become legendary and had done that long before I got there. And looks like you may be potentially heading back to the top of the NCAA Division II pile here with your men's team and your women's as a contender. Kind of give me the lay of the land for both programs here early in the year. I know the men just took back-to-back dual meets against Missouri State over the weekend. And tell me what you see so far.
Well, I can tell you, like everything that I see, I gauge everything based on effort levels in practice and commitment. And, we really have a bunch of kids this year that are really doing all the right things. They're training hard, and they've developed over the last few years. Most of them have now become, major players at the national meet. And we brought in some pretty good help on the girls' side that I think is going to, propel us up the ladder. We finished 3-2 last year, so 2 on men, 3 on women. But we just came up a little bit short, with this fifth-year COVID thing that goes on. That plays a big role in how you're going to finish. But so far, right now, we just need to keep doing what we're doing.
Well, and again, mention the men with the 2 wins. The men's team this fall is number 1 in Division II on the national poll. The women at number 4. When I was there with you, and again, we talked about that a little bit, but 10 consecutive national championships on the men's side from 2005 to 14. Looking for that first one since then. Had a lot of close calls. I think runner-up, the last 2 years, 3 years, had 4 runner-ups overall. What changed in the landscape of Division II men's swimming in those years? I know that Queens and some others rose up, but and what has allowed you to kind of get back to where you feel like, hey, this is our time again?
Yeah, that's a good point about what occurred in that process. Queens came in, definitely made a big impact, poured a lot of money into their program within their coaching staff, and they did a really good job. It came down a lot of times to the really big international guys that you need to win, and they won those recruiting battles, and that's really kind of what propelled them up that ladder. And then other schools started kind of looking at maybe the way I designed the program to get it going, and which is, try to find some really good kids, because if you can get a really fast kid to practice, everybody will chase them, and then everybody gets better. And so a lot of programs started, just adding more swimming money. And as the programs like Findlay, Ohio, that never had anybody, all of a sudden has 3 or 4 really good guys, the effect was that these athletes chose to go to a lot of these other schools, and then it just divided the point score downward. Instead of having 2 or 3 big super teams that we saw when we made those 10-year runs, there were just 8, 10, 12 teams all of a sudden scoring hundreds of points at the national meet that was never like that during that period of time. So hats off to a lot of those other coaches, because they did a good job coaching those kids up as well. And it just changed. Instead of scoring like we used to score 6, 7, and one year even 800 points, now if you could get 500, 535, you're going to win. So kids went to other schools, and the landscape changed dramatically. And we've really done a great job developing a lot of kids in the last 2-3 years. If you look at the 200 IM last year at the national championship, we had girls scoring in the top 8 that were never there their freshman year. We had 3 guys in the top 8 of the 200 IM. Only one had been there before, and then one guy won the console heat. So there were 3 new guys that played a big factor in that. And so you can kind of go by event to event and see the development of some of our kids. That's why I think we're poised. But our nemesis, Tampa, now, they won their first ever title. They've made a living on grabbing these fifth-year guys from the COVID that have graduated from either Louisville or Florida State or Florida or even USC, and they'll come over to their school and swim that last fifth year and score a bunch of points and get a master's in the process. And that's what hit us last year. That was what catapulted them to the first place and kept us from kind of winning, because they recruited a lot of post-grad kids.
Yeah.
And that will end this year. So this is the last year of that COVID fifth-year eligibility. So I think they even got a kid this year from Florida State, Ponce de Leon, nice last name.
Yeah.
He's just tearing it up for him, and he's a brand-new guy. So they got these one-year guys that come in that have really, really impacted, and we really haven't gone that direction. We've just recruited more of the traditional kid, and we haven't been able to pull that for a variety of reasons. One, a master's at Drury is 2 years, and the kids don't want to commit to, and the master's programs at Tampa are 1 year, and they'll commit for 1 year and go down and swim in the sun, and they do a good job with them, though. I mean, They swim really fast. They get excited about winning a title, and they buy into the coach down there, and he's done a great job with those kids. But it certainly had an enormous impact on the meet.
Well, and it's like a hired gun type thing that they've gone that route, and point scores. And I should point out that it's not like you guys have been slouches in that period. I mean, I look at it, and since 2015, the women have been the national runner-up 4 times. The men have been runner-up 5 times. So, I mean, you guys have been right there. It's just getting that over the hump of that one team, whether it was a Queens or a Tampa. And the thing that's happened, I think, in your sport that I wanted you to comment on is the way you've elevated the GLVC, your own conference. I mean, Indy and McKendree and schools that were an afterthought. Now you actually, what used to be the Drury Invitational for the GLVC is now actually a competitive meet, isn't it?
Oh, my gosh. The GLVC is like, I call it mini NCAAs.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's NCAA light. I tell our kids, when you go there, you're going to be racing these guys, and it'll be the same guys that show up at the NCAAs. And, Missouri S&T will shave down, and they'll be fast. And you're trying to balance your very best kids to make them sharp at NCAAs. You don't really let them rest too much, because they may show up and be flat at the NCAAs, which is what really affected Indy last year. When you show up to the GLVC and you swim lights out top to bottom, I would worry as a coach that I may have dropped the training for my already qualified super guys at the NCAAs show up and they're flat. And that, you look at the results from NCAAs last year, and that's exactly what happened to Indy. McKendree, Jimmy Tierney does a phenomenal job. He was a longtime coach at Northwestern, Division I women's coach, decided to switch his career and move to St. Louis and, coach at McKendree. And he's a great coach and does a great job. And, the GLVC meet is rocket fast, and I don't get too worried if my A-plus guys, we want to win the meet for sure. My kids like to win, but they want to be 100% at NCAAs, so you have to learn to balance that. You can get caught up in the let's win the small goal and take your eye off the big prize at NCAAs, and we try to balance that as best we possibly can.
42 seasons at Drury, and it's kind of unique because we look across. I just finished talking last fall and spring to Keith Gutton, who did the same thing with Missouri State baseball, and never left. And really the same story. Assistant coach there, promoted to head coach, stays 4 decades plus. When you got into this at Drury after being a student there, did you ever imagine you'd stay this long? Because you've had opportunities, and those opportunities come when you're heading a program that's won a combined 35 national championships.
Yeah, there were times. I mean, I had calls. A lot of people that don't probably really understand how head coaches are hired at these big schools. You probably don't drop your resume in the mail and apply for it. I think people that have connections with the university, I'll call it, will call you and persuade you or ask you to apply. They don't really represent the university per se, but they're attached. They are, and they'll say, or it could be the outgoing coach. I mean, sometimes the ADs will go to the outgoing coach and say, if they're retiring or something, they'll say, hey, I would like 3 or 4 names of people that I feel would be a good candidate for our school. And the list is, started with smaller Division I schools that I felt that my program was already better than and didn't feel that they would have the finances and the wherewithal to really do much more than, I had, or I felt I had a better student athlete anyway. And it did climb. To be honest, there were a couple jobs there that I not say that I didn't want, but I had to take a step back and just ask about the quality of life, the family situation. You put the longer you stay somewhere, the deeper the roots, and you just really enjoy what you're doing, the people you're involved with, and the kind of the family situation I think that we've created here at Drury, and you just decide it's good enough for life. There's that all those things combined satisfy what you really want. So that's why you stay.
Well, and you clearly outkicked your coverage with your wife Amy. I mean, there's no question. Everybody that knows you would admit that.
Oh yeah.
How big a role has she been in all this for 4 decades as a swim mom and all the ins and outs and travel and everything else, the hours that you had to put in? You kind of talk about that if you would.
Yeah, I'm not sure a lot of people really kind of completely understand the level of commitment that I've made to swimming, and my coaches that have coached alongside of me, from Brian Beatty and Jason Owen, Jason Height, all these guys. So they're 100% committed guys, and I go in at 5:30 in the morning. Amy has to get all the kids up, ready to go to school, ship them off to school, get them going. Has to deal with every element of the family life here. I would coach in the afternoon at Drury, finish up. My kids all swam Springfield Aquatics, and so I would stay through that workout, and we'd roll in at night at 8:30. And I was of literally no help at all. So she did it all. And you talk about me out kicking my coverage. She's an amazing woman, and she's carried the load here in everything family. And we kind of divided up chores. She cooks and cleans, and I build and repair. That's kind of our saying that we have. And so, I'll build some stuff and repair some stuff when I can, and she cooks and cleans and carries the weight of what a lot of people would never, ever put up with. But, she runs our Springfield prep team, which is a lesson program. We've developed kids from bubble blowers to, hey, Kate McCarville was 12th this year at the Olympic trials for Tennessee. She came through our program. You can go through Nicholas Brink, Ryan. I could list endless kids that have come through our program. Bailey Nunn, who came to Drury, and all these kids, they all learned to swim with us, and they became fantastic swimmers. So she runs the prep team and gets everything organized for all the lessons, and that's what we've done for our whole life, and that's, and we've enjoyed that process.
You talked about the COVID fifth year a second ago, and a lot of coaches have been doing this for a long time, would look at the current landscape of the NCAA with transfer portal and NIL and things like that. Does that filter down to D2 swimming? Have you seen any of that? Do you guys benefit from the portal? What is that environment like from a swimming standpoint at Division II?
Well, I think we're just on the cusp of seeing a real big shift right now, and that's more from the Grant House versus NCAA case, and I'll set that aside for a second. When it comes to the portal, we have a very simple rule on our team. We 100% want you here, but if you think you can get a better deal, because a lot of our kids, we had a young lady last year develop up, and she said, hey, my friend from another school got on the portal, and now she's on another full ride at another school, and I want to do that because I know you can't give me a full ride because we spread our scholarships. We have 7. Division I has 14. I mean, right there, you realize that your kids are going to spend some money out of pocket to come to Drury in a lot of cases, and they could potentially get a full ride, more for the female athletes, because in men's swimming at Division I, there's 9.9, and we're dealing with 7 at Drury. But in a lot of cases, we've had kids go on the portal. They've gone to other schools. You happen to know Karol Ostrowska, who did that from Poland. We got him super fast. He led off the relay for the Olympic Games. He would have been number 2 at the Division I meet, and he had all these people knocking on his door. And he went ahead and bolted. And I just tell the kids, sometimes the grass is not greener. We don't leave as enemies. I still support all the kids. I want them to look at their options. The last year, Carol didn't make the NCAA meet in anything. I mean, so sometimes, I don't want to say that Drury is the perfect place for everybody, but sometimes it's not what they think it's going to be. And I think a lot of times these kids just think that they can jump around and find a better solution. It may be financially better for them, and a lot of times they really need that. But I think you can glean as much as you can from the school that you're at if you have a really competent, good, hard-working coach that's willing to do the things to help you to get better, and that the grass is not always greener. But we don't sell that nowadays. We sell, I can go and get this, or I could go and get a better deal with that. And I put aside the Grant House case that a lot of people are probably familiar with. It's going to be the, $2.8 billion settlement for back pay for student athletes. And it's honestly going to bankrupt a lot of programs. Now, it'll be interesting to see what schools opt in or opt out. I'm curious to see what Missouri State does, because it's affecting Division I schools. You either opt in or opt out. But the big schools are going to have to start to spend a whole lot more money on their primary sports. And that's going to leave smaller amount of money for what we'll refer to as Olympic sports, or the sports that just aren't generating that ticket sales like basketball and football. I get all that. I understand all that. But it's going to damage the opportunities, because the SEC already ruled that the maximum number of guys on a team is going to be maxed out at 22. Well, Florida has 40-plus boys on their team, so they're cutting 20-plus guys. I've had conversation with Bill Durancott, the Ohio State coach, who's a really good friend of mine, and he called me and said, Brian, I'm releasing at least a dozen boys and girls. I'm going to push them your way if you're going to have some availability. Ray Lewis, Indiana, I've talked to Ray. Ray's the same thing. They're going to have to release a lot of kids. There will be no more walk-on status kids probably at the major Division I. So the trickle-down effect is more of these kids are going to come to Division II. And Division II is going to get faster, in my opinion, because they're going to miss on a lot of these walk-ons that really develop in college, and then those kids are going to blossom at a Division II school. So I think the Grant House thing is probably going to have the biggest impact. The transfer portal, we didn't have that many kids go on it. Most of our kids are happy and content and enjoying swimming faster. But occasionally somebody has to, to go for a variety of reasons, and most of the time they're seeking the big, what we call cost of attendance scholarship, which gives them some spending money, and we don't have that here, and we realize it. But the Grant House case, it's I don't think people realize how devastating it's going to be for minor sports.
Look at your roster this year, and I see on the men's side, 6 from Brazil, 3 from Germany, 3 from Spain, Belarus, France, Morocco, Canada, Mexico. The women's side, just about the same. Norway, Sweden, Ukraine, Peru, Brazil, Leeds, Scotland. What is it about an international swimmer that makes them so appealing, and how the heck do you find them?
Well, finding them is easy because the Internet's just chock full of them. Every international kid in the world of swimming wants to come to the United States. They do not offer collegiate swimming in any other country. You can't do your sport. And they tell you when they enroll in the university, you will not have time to play sports. And these kids don't want to give up their sports. So they flock. If you went to Louisville's website, you would see all these international kids, especially Brazilian, because the head coach there is a Brazilian guy that I've been friends with. He was a D2 winner, he was national champion in the 400 IM. And everyone flocks to find the fast international kids that help lift up your program. But a lot of our kids internationally aren't our fastest kids. But we have a reputation of developing kids that they've followed, probably because of the history or tradition of the kids that have been here before, like Sweden. We've always had a lot of Swedish kids. And now we just open our doors. These are all kids that want to do what they love. They want to get a good education, and they have found that Drury can provide that. So, so we, the recruiters too, the recruiters that they have recruiting services all over the country, and their job is to help find a place where the kid will be happy and the parents will be happy sending them. So I'll give you a quick example. Last year, we had a boy from France. He walked on our team. Out-of-pocket expense was about $25,000. Swam really fast, dropped about 5 seconds, just missed NCAAs. Everybody knows on our men's team, money starts when you get to the NCAA. And I told him I could give him something small. And he said, no, my parents are really pressuring me. I have to find a school that's much, much cheaper. And I said, we'll never get the cost there. Not now, maybe in another year. And he said, I got a bolt. So he's the only guy that went on the portal last year. He found a school on the East Coast that gave him what he wanted. He went there. Within a month, I had that recruiter send an email. This guy is very unhappy. Team culture bad, training bad, housing bad, everything's bad. And I said, Claire, who's the recruiter, I can't do anything. I told him what it was going to cost. Kid talks to his parents again. Claire comes back and says, hey, they'll pay it. This is not worth it to them. So the recruiters I've become friends with, 3 or 4 recruiters in Poland, 3 or 4 recruiters in Spain, in France, in Sweden, internationally. I have coach friends that coach internationally and live in other countries and coach. And when the parents come to them and say, what would be a good school for my son or daughter to go to, they throw out Drury. And so, over 40 years, you get to know the world of swimming becomes really, really minuscule. And people want their kids to be successful and they want them to be happy. So they pick up the phone and they call you. So we don't, we get a lot of emails. We get a lot of people. I did a Zoom call just recently with a recruiter from France for a boy next year. And he's asking me, okay, I want in. I want to come. Because I already have boys from France. and they're swimming fast, and kids want to swim fast. So it's a simple process. It's, especially the years I've been here, I think if you hopscotch around, it would probably change, but built a lot of relationships all over the world in the last 40 years.
Are they training differently at a younger age over internationally? Is this why sometimes they're faster? Because I know you've had, really great American-born swimmers as well, but you look through it and there are a lot of international stars at Drury sprinkled in. Do they do anything differently at a different stage in their life?
Well, I think if you look at the Olympics this year, you can read a lot into it. We did not dominate swimming like we did. Katie Ledecky did, and we had some other people sprinkled in here or there. The rest of the world is catching up to the USA in swimming, and that's simply because there's so much out there. I like to say you could get probably a better master's degree by just studying swimming on the internet with all the information than going to a university and getting a master's in whatever if you're really just wanting to coach swimming. There is so much information, and they've been able to take it and prepare their kids. So the world stage is much more on an even keel than it ever has been. Back when I first started, you either went to a lot of clinics or listened to a lot of older coaches to glean all that information that you could from them. And now you can log on. There's videos. I'm constantly posting videos of the kids that have perfect strokes on our website, and our kids watching at home at night and sharing all this content. And so the rest of the world is kind of catching up to the United States in swimming, and you saw it on display at the Olympic Games, and I think it's just becoming a much more level playing field.
As parents of, we've got kids about the same age now in the teenage years, and it's just been different for these two that I've had growing up, and you've run a Springfield Aquatics youth program for years. Have you noticed a change in kids now in terms of training? Because swimming is not easy. I mean, it's a sport. You got to be there early. You got to do the same thing over and over and over and over every day that you train. Is it harder to get kids that want to do that now because of social media and all the distractions of kids, and some would say maybe even the work ethics now?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think there's a big shift. It was nothing for us to have, 100% attendance with, 20, 30 senior kids that are training, an hour and a half in the morning and 2 hours at night every day of the week. And I've seen a big shift in that, and people value their free time much more than I think people did in the past. Maybe I don't know if it's a cultural shift, but it's not to say that we don't still have kids. We just don't see. I mean, they're just doing a lot of different things. There are a lot of different choices out there. I would kind of equate it as, people used to watch NBC, CBS, ABC because it was the only three channels that you would get in on your TV. And now you can watch anything, anytime. You have a gazillion choices. The viewership has to be down in the three major networks because they're not captive. That's life. Life is like that. You have so much freedom and so much things to draw your attention in different areas. I think, I can't say that it's all linked to the internet iPhone era, but I think it does change people's behavior, and we still have a great group of kids in Springfield that are training hard and getting faster and going to go off and swim in college. It's just not quite the same as the past where we had, and maybe it's the parents that are the ones that are affecting them. I will have to say, I don't think the kids have changed. I think the parents have changed. And I'm not knocking the parents because they're just parents raising kids, but the kids are all still the same. They still come to the pool and ready to learn and eager to learn and things like that. it's the consistency that it takes to be a really good swimmer. There is no substitute for all that aerobic training, because that aerobic capacity to be a really good swimmer has to occur between the ages of 8 and 18. And, it diminishes, your aerobic capacity development diminishes the older you get. So the key years of being really, really committed are really between 8 and 15, because research has shown that if you take an 18-year-old, you can't really improve their max VO2 by only about 10%. So if I get a late bloomer kid, they better be a sprinter, because they're never going to swim the longer events, because their energy system, just the way their whole body has been designed, miss that opportunity. And that's why when you're young, you have to grind and put a lot of work in, if that makes sense.
35 national championships in this men's and women's programs combined, since you've been there. Of course, you swam under Jack Steck, the great coach, and learned from him, then did your own thing after that. And if you had to pinpoint anything, because other schools have not won 35 national titles, and if you had to pinpoint anything in this 42-year run that separates Drury from everybody else, what would it be? And I'll preface that by saying the thing that I was always amazed with, and still am, is the relationships you cultivated with your kids. First of all, none of them know your first name. You're just Reynolds, to them all. And but just still.
Well, actually, I went by Brian until Beatty came along, and then there was Brian.
Oh,
Beatty. So we shifted from calling me Brian to
Beatty and Reynolds.
And Beatty, because we were both Brian. Yeah, that's when that took place. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if I talk to any of your former swimmers and run into them, the Aaron Dolans, people like that, you're always just Reynolds. But I just think back to the relationships you formed with those kids when they were there, and still continuing 30 or 4 years on. And I got to think that the team aspect that you guys molded for these kids from different countries and different backgrounds, they're all good swimmers, and you taught them how to be good swimmers, but just getting along like they did, and then going on in life and becoming doctors and lawyers and giving back to the program. It's just the culture, I think. Would you say that's probably the Drury difference in terms of what you guys have done?
Oh, 100%. I think it's a combination of two things. I think we've been successful at Drury because Drury has supported swimming. Drury has, it goes all the way back. I started the same year that Dr. John Moore started, and he came over to the pool and met me, put an interest in what I was doing, said, "Hey, your men's team is pretty good. What if we start women?" And I said, "Well, we need a new pool if we're going to start women, but I'll go ahead and start women if you'll build a pool." And he built a pool. And it's been everything down the line. The leadership at Drury has fundamentally always been supporting, I believe, all the sports. And when I needed something or wanted something, I was typically granted what I wanted, not all the time. I would have wanted more, but I always felt like everybody at Drury had been part of a big family. And the other half of me is how I was brought up. And the influences that I had from the coaches that I admired the most always had more of a family effect. And there's a saying, and I know people say, you can beat a team, but you can't beat a family. And, I just love my kids. I really love them. I didn't always like what they were doing, and I had to come down from time to time on things that weren't going right. But most of these kids, when they come to the pool every single day and walk out totally exhausted, and the coaching staff that we've had over the years, I already mentioned a bunch of them, they are guys that gave 100% as well. And when you have that, you can kind of build that more of a family than a team. And to me, that's been the biggest part of having success and finding success. And as you mentioned, we've had two Walter Byers finalists, which is the most prestigious award you can get from the NCAA. Chris Mender was runner-up, and Kelsey Ward won that. You were there, I think, when Kelsey was there. Yeah. And, it's special. I had special kids. I gotta say, I got lucky a lot of times in finding those kinds of kids that, could really, bring the best out of each other, best out of themselves. I have a saying with the team now: take care of each other, take care of yourself, and everything will work out. So, over the last few years, I think, as a parent, you spend your whole life caring for your child, and that's what I've tried to do with the swimmers. And it's kind of a simple formula, but at the same time, I think it's worked out pretty well.
Well, and your coaching tree extended out there, the former swimmers and assistants and everything are doing the same thing and doing well, from Jason Owen, Jason Hyde, of course, Dave Collins that you hook up with now at Missouri State over the weekend. And Dave told me to be nice, so I'm just going to say his women look really powerful again, don't they? And they should win the Valley for another, their 55th consecutive year or something.
Yeah, I don't see anybody challenging him there.
Yeah,
they're going to win that title.
Absolutely. Well, it looks like you got another good pair of squads. We'll catch up with you in the spring, or at late winter. Best of luck to you. And Brian, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Scott. It's always good catching up with you.
You bet. You too. Thanks. That's going to do it for another edition of Around the Ozarks Sports Scene. Our big thanks to Brian Reynolds for taking us behind the curtain with Drury Swimming, a program that just has no comparison, no parallels here in their sport in the area. Done a great job for many, many years, and looks like he's got another great team there. A big thank you to our two sponsors, Fast Break Sports, which is over off South Campbell, and your home for all things sports cards and memorabilia. We're going to head back over there here in the next few weeks to talk holiday specials, some gift ideas, maybe visit with a local prospect at the baseball level that's a card collector and get his thoughts on what he gets from the hobby. So go see the guys at Fast Break Sports for all your needs in that regard. And then the Pitch. Great place to eat and have some beverages over on East Sunshine in the Southern Hills Shopping Center. The Pitch sponsors are What to Watch This Weekend segment. And I would say the two things that I would put on your radar would be Missouri State football is home on Saturday. It's a 2 o'clock start. Coach Ryan Beard's team is just killing it right now, 6 wins in a row. They've got Southern Illinois coming into Plaster Sports Complex. 2:05 kickoff. You can catch it live at the stadium or watch it on ESPN+. Great time to go over and watch that at the Pitch. And then Monday Night Football, the Chiefs and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. My guy Baker Mayfield going into hostile territory, minus a few receivers. It could be a tough night for Baker and the Bucs, but the Chiefs playing at Arrowhead are a different animal. That is Monday Night Football. Go catch that at the Pitch as well. That's going to do it. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week on Around the Ozarks Sports Scene.